Hello and welcome to another episode of the Only Playbook, episode 59, guys. It feels like it's been so long since I've seen your guys' faces on these Skype cams. Couple of weeks of hiatus, transitioning, moving, lots of crazy things happening in personal life stuff, but we're glad to be back here. The Only Playbook. I'm Sweetcar. I got Shishot, Shovit. What's going on, guys?
Not
A
much.
lot.
It does feel like it's been a lot. Yeah, for me, not much. You guys have a lot going on. You guys are both in New York and doing big things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
big
I'm just
things,
trying to
little things.
survive. Just trying to find time to breathe right now.
Ah, dude. Yeah, me too, but for different reasons. So anxiety's been through the roof the last couple of days with a lot of changes and stuff. But yeah, we're both in the Big Apple. I'm in the city. She shows a little bit outside of the city, but big changes for us. But the grind don't stop with the pod. And so like Cam Gigandit and never back down, we got to keep giving people what they want. So this week, we are going to talk about the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy football for the 2022 season. Again, a lot of guys on this list. I think what I saw from all of our lists was we have most of a lot of overlap, but the rankings a little bit different. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of why we put these guys where we put them. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Number 10 on the consensus top 10, we have A.J. Brown, wide receiver for the new Philadelphia Eagles, recently traded from the Tennessee Titans. Consensus rankings, we had him at 10. Shishot, you had him at 9. I had him at 10, and then Shobit, you actually left him out of your top 10 for Keenan Allen. And so, Shishot, I'll let you kick this one off. Why do you have A.J. Brown in your top 10?
I mean, I would have had him in my top 5 if it wasn't for some of the things that went down last year that didn't really let him excel. Because I've been saying it for years. I think he's more talented than DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf's bigger, faster, but AJ Brown can run more routes. He can do more things, and that's pretty important as a number one wide receiver to not be limited in what you do. He was the 4th highest graded wide receiver per PFF last season and 5th in yards per route run, with a minimum of 50 targets because he got injured. But before switching to a run-first approach, the Eagles were 6th in neutral passing rate, weeks 1 through 6 last season. We could see Philly not be so gung-ho on the run game now because they have this mammoth of a human being. So the Philly offense is about to be way more dynamic. It's about to be like competitive, and that's pretty scary because when we organize a team, we organize a good run game, a quarterback that can throw and run, and receivers that have no weaknesses. So, and they have this now, and they've done so many things through the draft to make all of this work out. And the biggest benefactor for all of this is going to be AJ Brown and his fantasy owners.
Yeah, I actually echo all of that sentiment. So I pulled up a strength of schedule that CBS Sports started doing for receivers, running backs, and stuff too. So it's pretty interesting. It's based on like matchups, defensive schemes, the cornerback that they're most likely to face based on if they're an outside receiver, if they line up in the slot or where. So a lot of advanced analytics, it seems like, went into this. So pretty appreciative of that. And AJ Brown and the Eagles have the number one easiest strength of schedule for receivers. And so I think that's really important to look at based on the cornerbacks that he's going to face. And obviously, like you said, Shishot, Philadelphia wanted to last year, put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands and let him make plays. But I think what they found out early on is outside of Devontae Smith, there's not a lot of playmakers. I guess Goddard, but not a lot of other receivers that were going to help Jalen Hurts. And so Jalen Hurts in his second year needed a big, dependable receiver that we've been talking about all year that the Eagles should trade for, and they finally got that guy. And so what's interesting about A.J. Brown is over the last 2 years playing in a run-first offense with Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in the league, he was still 7th in the entire NFL in total targets, right? And this guy is a touchdown machine. I know he's injury prone. I know he gets hurt, but in the 43 games he's played, he has 24 touchdowns. And so I'm expecting that to uptick with Jalen Hurts taking a next step in year 3. I don't think, like you said, the Eagles are going to have to be so gung-ho on running the football because they have a true number one receiver. I think having A.J. Brown is going to help open up things for Devontae Smith as well, and Dallas Goedert and the entire offense. And the talent, I think, is something that all of us can agree on. He has top 5 talent capabilities. So when you're such a talented receiver coming into an offense where they're going to rely on you to come in and be the number one receiver, not be a decoy to a run heavy offense, it's not Derrick Henry, it's Miles Sanders. And I think, they're not going to run Miles Sanders to the ground like they do Derrick Henry. So for all those reasons, I think A.J. Brown has a really, really solid chance to finish inside the top 10.
Yeah, all those are really good reasons to get AJ Brown. I'm just not high on AJ Brown this year, and for me, it's just a lack of trust in that Philly system. We saw in the beginning of the year they tried to be this team that passed the ball a lot, and that didn't work. And so they tried to be more of a balanced attack, and running the ball was kind of what led them to win more games. The Philadelphia Eagles passed were 29th in passes last year. I just don't think that being in the top 10, you're gonna want your team to be a lot more efficient in the passing game. And Jalen Hurts, also, I'm not confident in him as a quarterback. Had the fourth, he targeted receivers at the fourth lowest rate. And so, AJ Brown was on a team when he's competing with guys like Westbrook, and 32-year-old Julio Jones, and now he's going to be, going to. His teammates are Dallas Goedert. His teammate is also Devontae Smith. So for me, I just don't think of him as a safe top 10 pick, where I would put Keenan Allen and that really good Chargers offense in front of him. But I mean, if the belief here is that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to revamp their offensive scheme and become more of a passing team, then I think that's a good pick. But I would shy away from him from top 10. I put guys like Michael Pittman or Keenan Allen in front of him personally. But that's where I'm at.
Keenan Allen was close for my top 10 as well. I think what I saw from him in terms of advanced stats is his yards per route run had been decreasing substantially over the course of the last 3 years, and targets, or average depth of target for him, was also decreasing because they love to throw those deep passes to Mike Williams and Palmer and the other guy. I can't think of his name right now, but anyways, all those reasons why I think Keenan Allen's a tremendous possession receiver. I think the catches will be there, but lack of touchdowns, lack of deep passes. He could be like a 10 catch, 80-yard, Jarvis Landry type guy as he starts to get older. And so if we're banking on upside, we're banking on an AJ Brown who's still young and incredibly talented, and he still hasn't been able to maximize his potential. We're just going off the fact that maybe there is an opportunity for a team that went out and traded for him to actually value his potential and utilize it. So I think it'll be interesting. I think either of those guys could fall into the top 10. Another guy that I had right outside the top 10 was T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is going to be expecting to have a pretty big uptick just with the way Joe Burrow and that offense kind of runs their offense, if you will. And so with Jamar Chase getting a lot of heavy looks and what he's seen to break out with, there could be a tremendous opportunity for a guy like T. Higgins. So those are the guys that I had kind of right outside the top 10. So no wrong answers there. But jumping on to number 9, we have Mike Evans, trusty Mike Evans. This guy is the epitome of just pretty much guaranteed 1,000 yards and guaranteed right around 10 touchdowns. Pair that with the fact that he is playing for Tom Brady still, and Tom Brady hasn't shown any signs of aging. You lost Antonio Brown. It looks like Chris Godwin might start the season on the PUP list. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Mike Evans to get fed. Even if the yards aren't there, this guy has just become so touchdown heavy, and the fade routes and no Gronk now. Gronk officially retiring. So I just think Tom Brady's going to have to rely heavily on Mike Evans. And that's why I think with what we've seen in 7 to 8 years of just constant 1,000 yards and constant right around 10 touchdowns, I think it's another year for him to solidify himself in the top 10. And that's why I have him as my number 9 receiver here. I know, Shisho, you had him right at top 10, and Shobit, you had him at 9. So it's pretty much kind of consensus for what we thought. But Shobit, why do you have Evans here at number 9?
Yeah, I have him as number 9, and I did this, I think, about a week or two ago. But now I'm looking back at it, I think Evans could be even higher. He could have a really good first half of the season while Godwin is not there. There's no Antonio Brown. Chris Godwin's not there. There's no Gronk, and the Bucs were top 3 in pass rate last year. So he's gonna get the targets, right? They did also get Russell Gage, who could be some guy that they can that you can maybe draft in the later rounds as someone that complements Mike Evans. I'm scared of Mike Evans after Godwin comes back. I think that if you have him in the first 9 weeks, that you're going to be really happy with Evans' production. After that, you may feel like, Godwin's kind of coming in and stealing some of the thunder. So maybe use him as a trade. But in order to draft him in top 10, I think that would be a solid decision to get Evans, just because he's going to get the targets.
Yeah, I'm not as fearful with this whole Evans and Godwin situation. I mean, Godwin's been here throughout Evans' career, and Evans puts up touchdowns and yards regardless. And Godwin was hurt for a little bit or significant amount last year, but I think coming back, they understand the usage here. Godwin is just down the middle guy, slants, some touchdowns here and there, but Evans is the outside receiver. He's the guy that's going to go up and get touchdown catches. That's why he was second last year, and in amount of targets in the back of the end zone or something crazy like that. And he's finished, as like a top 20 receiver every single year. And I only see insane amount of rise in the first 6 weeks or so without Godwin being there. But even after Godwin comes back, I think it'll regress a little bit, but it's not enough to be worrisome because he'll still be classic Mike Evans with his, obvious 2 touchdown games now that Gronk's not there.
Yeah, I think Russell Gage is a really nice opportunity to fit really well in with this offense, playing as the number 2 receiver early on. And then when Godwin comes back, we've seen how much Brady likes to spread the ball, right? Brady loves his number 3 receivers, and Brady, and the rumors and the reports were that Brady reached out to Gage and said, "Hey, I want you on the team." And they paid him like pretty decent money. I think it was like 3 years, 30 mil. So for a guy getting like 10 mil a year, something like that, I think Gage is going to be utilized a lot. But like you said, it's hard to argue with a guy that's been as consistent as Mike Evans, and you're playing for a quarterback who's going to throw 4,000 yards, is probably going to throw close to 40 touchdowns. And so that's going to have to go somewhere. And as the true X receiver and Mike Evans as the touchdown threat, like both of you guys said, I think there's a really good chance that he still finishes inside the top 10 for another year. Number 8 on the consensus list, a little bit of a drop for this guy. Tyreek Hill comes in at number 8 on our consensus board. I had Tyreek Hill at number 7. Shashot, you did have him at 8. Shovit, you had him at 7. So I think we all are sharing a pretty similar sentiment here for Tyreek Hill. Shashot, as a guy who had Tyreek Hill last year, why do you have him a little bit lower? Why do we all have him a little bit lower this year?
It's Tua, right? Like you're not getting Mahomes broken plays that turn into 80-yard touchdowns. If Mahomes couldn't do what Mahomes did, Tyreek Hill wouldn't even be that high, even with the Chiefs, right? It's because of those breakage in plays that ends up giving him 200 yards and 3 touchdowns that week. He's very bimodal. Like it's either not a lot of points or a lot of points, right? Like he's not an average receiver by any means. Like it's like sometimes he'll get 6 catches for 60 yards, or he'll get you 200 yards and 3 touchdowns because of those broken plays. So you're banging when you're drafting Tyreek Hill, you're banging on those really, really big games. You're not drafting Tyreek Hill for consistency because Tyreek Hill is not a consistent player. So the reason I rank him a little bit lower than you guys is, he's not going to get those touchdowns. The touchdowns are going to be scarce. And there's a guy named Waddle who's literally the same thing as Hill, but a little bit more capable of lasting longer, taking more hits. So he's going to be more of a reliable option. I think Tyreek Hill is going to be the same Tyreek Hill as far as gadget plays and short yard situations or deep yard situations. But we're going to see a huge decrease in touchdowns. And I think for that reason, it's hard, to put him anywhere near the top 5. Last year, he was top 3. He was like a unanimous top 3, maybe number 1 for a lot of people. And now without the whole Mahomes thing and a lot of mouths to feed and the run first approach from the head coach, it's really hard for a guy like Tyreek Hill to be a top 3 wide receiver.
Yeah, for me, Tyreek Hill is kind of going into this offense that maybe Deebo Samuel was in. They've got Mike McDaniel now. So betting on Tyreek Hill is betting on his talent, not necessarily Tua and his capabilities, because that's a significant downgrade. I mean, but Tyreek Hill has had the most deep 20+ yards touchdowns since 2017 with 29. If Tua can help him increase that number, I think that Tyreek Hill will flourish. It all kind of depends on Tua. But other than that, also some quick pass and run kind of plays that we saw with Deebo Samuel. If Tyreek Hill will be used for that and not Jalen Waddle, then he's also going to flourish there. There's a lot of uncertainty with Tyreek Hill, but you just got to bet on his skills and what we've seen in the past and hope that kind of continues on with Miami.
Yeah, so I think a lot of similar stuff, right? So last year, Tyreek Hill had less yards and less touchdowns than he's ever had, but he had more receptions. And so it was exactly that, right? What did we talk about? Defenses slowly shifting and running this too high so that Tyreek Hill couldn't beat you over the top. And I listened to, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to tune into Tage's podcast that he recently started, Taking the Points, but they do a lot of good work with advanced analytics. And their most recent episode that they came out talked about the too high shell and how this year more teams are adjusting and utilizing the too high shell to take away guys like Tyreek Hill. And so how our offense is going to adjust. Now, I think the too high coverage is going to help Tua because Tua is not the over the top thrower, right? Tua is the guy that's going to dump the ball off to you and let you make plays. And that's exactly what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle thrive in. And so for that reason, I think there's going to be a chance that Tyreek Hill catches a lot of balls, but he's going to be expected to make a lot of things happen after the catch versus Shoshot, like you said, where he's going to be down the field for an 80-yard bomb. Tua, one, I don't think has the awareness to break out of the pocket and do all the things that Mahomes does. He absolutely does not have the arm strength that Mahomes does. I know the Dolphins tweeted out that video of completely underthrowing Tyreek Hill. And I'm like, I don't know.
That guy got fired, by the way. They've replaced that man. He lost his job.
Oh my God. Thank you, because that's one of the dumbest things you could ever put out there. So I'm like, dude, You're making your quarterback look bad. And so it made it like the receivers and Tua have to come out and say something. The receivers had to defend Tua. Like anytime something like that happens, that's not a good sign. And so if we're looking at a situation where it's going to be Tua, you're looking at a situation where, like you said, Waddle is basically another Tyreek Hill. Mike Gesicki is basically a wide receiver in a tight end's body. And so he's the big guy that's going to be, probably targeted in the red zone. Also under the radar, Cedric Wilson, they signed Cedric Wilson, who's a guy that caught 60 passes for 600 yards in a Dallas offense, right? So this is a fully capable receiver that they added as well. Pair that with the fact that they also signed Chase Edmonds, who's a dump off machine. So Tua, the dump off king, has so many guys he can dump the ball off to. I just think the scarcity of targets heading to Tyreek Hill's way is going to be the reason he's going to slightly regress here. So if we can't bank on the bombs from Tua to Tyreek Hill that we got from Mahomes, I don't really know, unless Tyreek's going to get like screen passes for 80 yards, how he's going to be such a monster in fantasy like he's been in the past. And so I guess the volatility of Tyreek Hill in the past may not necessarily be there, but Shoshot, like you said, we may also not see like the boom potential versus more so of like a bust potential. So it could be more consistency this year, but not enough to like take you over the top or a reason why you would overdraft for a guy that you used to in the past.
We talk about the Deebo Samuel role. Well, Deebo Samuel's a running back in our wide receiver's body. Tyreek Hill taking some of those hits would probably just die. So that is another reason that concerns me. And I think I could even make an argument for putting AJ Brown over Tyreek Hill because of the just the amount of weapons around him and the style of offense that isn't going to get those 80-yard touchdowns anymore. But yeah, it's early. And I think just with the name Tyreek Hill, people are fearful. And I think that deserves a little bit more credit than I'm willing to give him at this moment.
Yeah, and like you said, that name is going to be the reason why some people draft him a little bit too early. ADP is key in drafting in fantasy football, right? So I think we're going to see somebody be like, oh, Tyreek Hill's still on the board. This doesn't make sense. And they're going to take him maybe a little bit earlier than people who realize that situationally he's not in the same spot he was the last couple of years. So Tyreek Hill comes in at number 8 on our consensus board. Number 7, Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills here at number 7. I had Stefon Diggs as my number 5 receiver. Shoshot, you had him at number 6. And Shovit, you had him all the way down at number 8. So the reason why I have Stefon Diggs as the number 5 receiver, you still have Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Stefon Diggs, believe it or not, last year led the league in 20 end zone targets, which led the entire NFL, right? So for a guy that you wouldn't think is getting fade routes and things like that, or would be targeted as much as he is in the end zone, he led the league in targets, and he's as reliable as they come when it comes to hands. And so a guy who caught 103 balls, had 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. You lost Cole Beasley. I know that, I still honestly think that Josh Allen has more untapped potential to reach. He took that big leap from being completely inaccurate and having that big arm to last year being able to be a little bit more accurate. But the reason his fantasy thrived is because he started running the ball a lot more, just himself, and taking those touchdowns and stuff. But I think having Stefon Diggs in another year, another full off season of Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen, I think Stefon Diggs is primed to have another really, really good year. That's why I have him as my 5th receiver. But Shovit, you seem like you have him at number 8, the lowest out of any of us. What are your thoughts on Stefon?
Yeah, I wish I'd go to my past self and be like, what the hell were you thinking? Because he should be definitely a lot higher. No, I think that Stefon Diggs is going to get plenty of targets in this team, especially now, since I think, Shoshot, you brought this up last one of the podcasts where like they're not trying to run the ball with Josh Allen as much. They're trying to utilize him on the passing game, and he's more than capable with the arm strength. He's a great route runner. You mentioned he leads the targets. The only concern maybe is uprising of Gabriel Davis, who we saw got 4 touchdowns, in the playoffs. And so he might have an increased role, but I don't think that should take any away from his target percentage. So Diggs, scratch what I said about 8th. He should definitely be higher, 6th or even 4th or something like that. Top 5 definitely for Diggs.
Damn, definitely. Okay. There's definitely an argument there for sure. Diggs just, he was very under the radar because he started the season off kind of slow, but he ended off with a bang. So a lot of people kind of forgot him towards the middle part of the season because he wasn't really showing up. However, Josh Allen is just getting better as a quarterback, right? And now, like you mentioned, Shovit, that his head coach has come out and seen that this guy could potentially be the greatest quarterback of all time with all the tools he has. There's something very, very special there. And they're like, wait a second, let's not hurdle over linebackers anymore because we need to preserve your arm because it's special, right? Not saying he won't take off, but there's going to be more throws happening. More throws equals more receptions by wide receivers. And even with the emergence of Gabriel Davis, which I think is a very, very reasonable thing to be afraid of because that guy is special in his own way. If you've seen some of his, it's not even what he does during the play. It's how he gets up from the ground. That's the scariest thing I've ever seen. We can talk about that some other time. Maybe I'll make a TikTok over it. But Stefon Diggs has no competition. His closest competition throughout the year was Justin Jefferson. These Vikings and former Vikings just killing the game out here. He had 25 end zone targets, like you mentioned, Sweetheart. The next closest guy was Justin Jefferson with 6 less than that. So he is the man there. There's a serious emergence of Knox, and they have a they have a new running back who also catches passes and Cook now. So there's gonna be a lot of mouths to feed, but it's still not enough because of this high powered passing offense. They can run the ball 5 times a game and still win by 30. So it's like, there is no reason to fear that aspect that you would fear with players like AJ Brown and other stuff. Imagine if AJ Brown had 2 other good receivers next to him, that would be a reason to drop him down. But with players like Stefon Diggs, who's reached every pinnacle you can reach from a receiver standpoint, who has one of the greatest quarterbacks and has one of the best offenses, there's really nothing to worry here. And it's a pretty straight up top 6 slot for Stefon Diggs, I think, this year.
Number 6 on our consensus board here, Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel comes in at number 6. I have Deebo Samuel number 8 on my board. Shishot, you have Deebo Samuel number 3, and Shobit, you have him number 5. Let me start off here since I seem to be the lowest on Deebo Samuel. Here's my thoughts on Deebo Samuel, right? I think early on the rumors came out that he wants to be less of this hybrid type role and wants to be more of a traditional receiver. Obviously, you're thinking about your body, your longevity in the NFL, and how much more money you can make. When you're a running back, your longevity is drastically decreased, right? And so, yes, he's a physical specimen, but those hits will start to add up. If we're looking at Deebo Samuel strictly from a fantasy production perspective last year, he had 1,400 yards receiving, but he only had 6 touchdowns through the air. He had 365 yards rushing, but he had 8 touchdowns rushing last year, right? So more of his touchdowns came on the ground than they did through the air. And that was with Jimmy Garoppolo. That was with a more capable quarterback than what I think all of us assume this year it's going to be the Trey Lance show. I think there's still expectations. I think they even came out, Kyle Shanahan came out and said, oh, we're still trading Jimmy Garoppolo or whatever. And so with that being said, if Trey Lance is the future, I have no idea what to expect from Trey Lance. There's been rumors that he's a little bit slow. He's struggling. And then there's been rumors that he's been kind of taking a stride. Now, a lot of times it's smoke and mirrors in the offseason, depending on what you want opponents to think of your team and et cetera. But if I don't know what the quarterback's going to give me, if the receiver that had such a fantasy outburst last year utilized his rushing more and then came out in the offseason saying he wants to run less, if you're going to end up paying this guy because he's holding out, you're probably going to try to cater more to what he wants. If it's going to be a long-term contract you seek with him and he's going to be on the team to stay for years to come. So if they want longevity, I think they are going to reduce his running. The yards weren't even a ton. I mean, he only had 59 carries, but to have 8 rushing touchdowns on 59 carries, I have to believe those percentages are going to decrease because that's an absurd amount. For those reasons, I think that Deebo Samuel is going to slightly regress from what we've seen from him in the past. Now, could it be a lot of smoke in terms of them not rushing with him or him saying he doesn't want to run the ball and they actually still end up utilizing him the same? Absolutely. But as far as the offseason goes right now, this is really all we have to bank off of, but less about what he said and more about the fact that it's Trey Lance running the show and not Jimmy G anymore. That's why I'm a little bit lower on Deebo Samuel this year. Shishot, you have him number 3 on your list. Talk to us.
Yeah, it's crazy. I agree with everything you say, but it's funny how words could be flipped around. And I had the same script, but for why he is one of the most valuable. I'm looking at this guy as almost like the Eckler of wide receivers this year because it's not a sexy name, right? There's better receivers out there. However, let me tell you why this whole running, passing, none of that matters. None of that matters when it comes to Deebo Samuel. So last year, through weeks 1 through 9, he was wide receiver 2 in fantasy points per game, behind only Cooper Kupp. Over that stretch, he was leading all the receivers in the league in yards per route run. So even as a receiver, he's still killing it out here, right? So if you're telling me we're going to get rid of the runs and just make more of the passes happen, it's only going to flourish more. And, things like that. He averaged an insane 10.1 targets and 6.1 receptions in that time while they were using him as a running back as well. So with this whole wide back role that nobody else does besides Deebo Samuel, it creates a lot of confusion for the defense. And I think it's kind of foolish to think they won't use him as a running back at all. I think that the rushes may decrease situationally, but it's such a unique perspective that no other team has, that it would be kind of foolish to stay away from something like that, especially a running team like the 49ers. So I think, there's a lot of volatility with which way this could go, right? It's very, very volatile. So you have to be willing to ride the roller coaster into the promised land with such a valuable little diamond here. I think it's one of the most valuable things since Percy Harvin, just one of those people that you cannot cover, whether it's on the air or on the ground. And I think using him more as a receiver just will only help his case in the receiving game. And if he's already the number one receiver in the league in yards per route run, I think that's just going to make him a better receiver. One caveat to his game, though, is that he's very much a power player. He plays everything with power. There's not much cutting. He's not known to be like a route runner. And I think a lot of that will play because now the defenses have film on his route running, right? They could use him as a Swiss Army knife here and there, which is why I rank him so high. But the reason I'm not calling him number 1 or number 2 is because there are tapes. There are tapes on this man, and he's not the best route runner in the league, which means a lot of the ways he was catching the ball are going to have to adjusted somehow. And I think that's going to take some points away from Deebo Samuel.
No fear about Trey Lance taking the helm, and we have no idea what to expect from a quarterback.
Yeah, I think if you average 10 targets, whether it's Trey Lance or Garoppolo, I think it may actually make things better. I think now Deebo Samuel can turn those 20-yard catches into 80-yard touchdowns with the broken plays, because Garoppolo wasn't breaking no plays, right? He was just an idle quarterback waiting for the 3 seconds he has and throwing the ball. That doesn't give room for players like Deebo Samuel to break plays. But now with Trey Lance creating 6 seconds in the back, that's an immediate touchdown if Deebo Samuel gets the ball in the open field.
Yeah, I'm not even convinced Trey Lance is a quarterback that they're wanting to go with there. I think there's talks about like Baker Mayfield coming in and being traded for Garoppolo. Like, I would be really worried if Trey Lance is the quarterback on that team, because I just don't think that guy is as accurate. We just haven't seen enough from him. But in terms of Deebo Samuel, he requested a trade, but he does attend the mandatory training camps. And so he's there on the field. He's their best player, and I would assume that they will try to get him the ball as best as possible. We saw how they did it last year, running the ball and those short passes where he can make plays and things like that. He was a PPR monster last year. Was third in receivers as far as PPR goes. So for that, just the kind of pedigree that he brings, I think that I still want to get him at top 5, but there is certainly an uncertainty there. But the upside is still there just because it is Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I remember from Deebo Samuel as a receiver is what you said, Shishod, is like he's catching the ball over the middle, and it's not like he's necessarily juking people, but he's fast as fuck and he's powerful, right? So we'd see a lot of these inside catches just pretty much taking him to the house. And so, yeah, exactly. And so you're right. The one element is that Trey Lance can utilize broken plays more so than Jimmy Garoppolo, because Jimmy Garoppolo is basically a statue. I just worry that are these broken plays still going to be Trey Lance throwing the ball, or usually when you're young and a play breaks down, you're going to be more dependent on your legs, right? So I can see Trey Lance trying to utilize his legs a little bit more. So again, what you're getting at is the range of outcomes this year for Deebo Samuel is going to be pretty vast. Like it can be, he could be the number 10 receiver, or if Trey Lance, flourishes and thrives in this offense and adds that extra element of utilizing his legs and creating broken plays, Deebo Samuel could be number 1. So I think he has some of the highest range of outcomes in this top 10 in terms, in my opinion.
that's something you have to consider when you're drafting these players, right? Like when you draft Cooper Kupp, there's not a big range of outcomes. It's either 1, 2, or 3. When you draft Justin Jefferson, 1, 2, or 3. So like when you draft some of these players that used to be 1, 2, or 3, like Tyreek Hill, the range of outcomes have changed significantly. He could be top 20. He could drop to 18 overall in that offense who doesn't care about, a lot of things. So Deebo Samuel, unfortunately, has entered that conversation because of if Trey Lance were to come. But, like I said, if you're going to draft some of these players at a better value than some of your other members in your fantasy league would draft them at, then you have to consider the boom versus bust potential. And it's the whole Tyreek Hill thing all over again. You have to be happy getting some 8s 2 weeks in a row and then getting a 42 with Deebo Samuel, right? You have to understand that you have to compartmentalize those fears when you draft players like this. And just to kind of put a cherry on the top, I'm not afraid of those 8s. That's why I'm ranking him 3. I think just catching the ball 10 times, there's very few people in this league that are not running backs that can do things Deebo Samuel can do. And I think that's enough. That's enough to be pretty sure about getting 10 points, at least 10 points every week.
Number 5 on the list, surprising, because in the past, this guy probably wouldn't have been this low. Number 5 on our consensus board is Davante Adams. I actually have Davante Adams as my number 6 receiver. Shovit, you have Davante Adams as your number 6 receiver. Shishot has Davante Adams as his number 2 receiver. Shishot, start us off. Number 2, Davante Adams this year.
Yeah, this is a very, very unique style of top 3 that I went with this year. Davante Adams is the best receiver in football. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. There's players like Hopkins. There's other names like Cooper Kupp and stuff like that. Cooper Kupp has been resurging as of late. But Davante Adams has just been Davante Adams' whole life. Whether is it because of Aaron Rodgers? Most likely because of the volume. 28% target share is no joke. However, I think there's a lot of catching up. The Raiders are still going to be Raiders. They're not going to be like Packers dominating teams 32 to whatever. They're still going to be very much in the game. And don't forget, there's going to be 6 games where they're playing against the Chiefs, Chargers, and whoever else the other team is. I forgot. But so those are competitive games. Those aren't games that are going to be shoo-ins like how Aaron Rodgers has it playing against Vikings, shitty secondary, the Lions, and the Bears, right? So we're going to see games where I think the point differential will kind of make up in itself. And, you have Waller in the red zone and you have Hunter Renfrow catching ins and outs. But, like when I'm playing Madden or when I'm in the coach's helmet making decisions, there's situational times where I feel comfortable giving the ball to Hunter Renfrow. There's situational times I feel comfortable giving the ball to Waller, but I don't need a situation to be comfortable giving the ball to Davante Adams. So when it's a close game and we need a bunch of yards, which is what I assume the Raiders are still going to be like, they're a much better team, but they're in a division which just improved vastly. So, it is what it is. And I think having a resume that Davante Adams has, which has been unbothered by anything around him, it's really hard to take him away from that top 2 that I've had him be in for over the last 4 years now. So I think with the amount of times that the Raiders are going to be close in games or catching up, I think the amount of targets is not going to be as worrisome as we were anticipating. But again, this is skepticism, right? Like Hunter Renfrow's coming in hot. Like he's a very reliable receiver. He's turning into another Thielen. And then Waller, I don't know. I think I'm not a big Waller fan. I think I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think his peak has been reached. I think his hands are a big issue. And as good of a tight end as he is, I think he's a better receiver. And I think using him as a tight end isn't really getting the job done as much as it was the first year. So I think all that being said, I think red zone targets, he's going to surpass 1,000 yards. The touchdowns are going to regress. And that's the only reason he's 2 and he's not 1 for me.
Yeah, I mean that. I think that he's in the top 10 because he is Davante Adams and one of the best receivers that we have in the game. He is not 1, 2, or 3 for me because of the fact that there will be regression is what I'm assuming, anticipating because of Hunter Renfrow and because of Darren Waller. And when he was at the Packers, at the Aaron Rodgers, you have guys that are like in their 30s, guys that are like Cobb and MVS who are inconsistent. So Davante Adams got a bulk share of targets, and I think that a natural regression is expected there. So he's definitely still top 10, but I'm afraid to put him above guys like Justin Jefferson or Kupp or even CD just because of the fact that just regression. But the good things that have been coming is that Derek Carr and Devontae Adams have sort of chemistry. They played at Fresno State together, so that should allow him to be successful next year as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I think so. For me, it's really, really tough for me to put him inside my top 3 or even top 2, just because of kind of everything you guys have already mentioned, right? We know that Rodgers to Carr is a vastly big downgrade. Like Aaron Rodgers to us, arguably could be the most talented quarterback of all time, right? And Derek Carr doesn't even sniff like the top 25 best quarterbacks of all time. So like there is a drastic regression from a quarterback perspective. Now let's talk about Derek Carr as a quarterback, right? Derek Carr's best fantasy season came in 2015 and he was QB 14. He was the 14th best fantasy quarterback. The best fantasy receiver throughout Derek Carr's time as a Raider is Michael Crabtree. Michael Crabtree in 2016 had the best fantasy receiver year out of him, out of Amari Cooper, out of all the guys that they've had since then on. And in 2016, Michael Crabtree finished as wide receiver 12. Do I think Devontae Adams is a better receiver than Michael Crabtree? 100%. But do I think there's something to be said about Derek Carr liking to spread the ball and Derek Carr's fantasy production never being as great as a top 10 quarterback, and thus in turn means that his receivers fantasy production is never going to be that of like a top 5 or top 3 guy? I agree. And also Devontae Adams is now 29. He's going to be 30. Devontae Adams now year over year tends to miss like 1 or 2 games here and there. Do I think maybe he doesn't miss those games because of the target share with Renfrow and Waller this year? Yes, I agree. But I think utilizing Derek Carr has never been a guy that's force-fed one player. I think that's kind of the MO of Derek Carr. And I know that Devontae Adams is a guy you can force-feed the ball to, but I think if history tells us anything about this player and about the Raiders and about how they utilize receivers and how their fantasy production showcases at the end of the year, Devontae Adams is going to beat all of those numbers because he's the best receiver they've ever had in this time frame. But jumping from a wide receiver 12 as the best fantasy output the Raiders have put together in Carr's timeline with the Raiders to a top 3 receiver, I find that hard to believe. And I think, again, it's not a knock on Devontae Adams' skills because we know, again, skills-wise, he's the top 3 best receiver in the league. Some of us think he's the best receiver in the league, and there's definitely a case to be made for that. But I think that's why I have him as number 6 because, again, you're going from one of the best quarterbacks, if not the most talented quarterback of all time, to a guy who's just kind of good, who sometimes we can't really figure out why he doesn't play better than like he should. Like Derek Carr continues to be a mystery, and I think Devontae Adams is going to help alleviate some of that, but he can't just elevate Derek Carr from a quarterback 14 to a quarterback 3, which then in turn is going to elevate Devontae Adams' numbers. And that's just kind of why I have him as number 6.
I think it's going to elevate him significantly. And I think it may even be a top 5, top 6 situation for Derek Carr. Like you mentioned, Crabtree's the best thing he's got. Like we see the talent Derek Carr has. And we always wonder, Sweetcar, you especially are like, what the fuck? Like he looks like he's a good quarterback, but he makes these stupid decisions. Well, just last year was the only time he got like legit weapons. Outside of that, it's been slim pickings in the Raiders world. It's like, who do you throw the ball to? You can be as good of a quarterback as you want, but when you're throwing the ball to like Reynolds, just, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really give you
a Crabtree and they had Cooper, but I know they're not Adams, but those are still number 1 receivers in their respective years.
Yeah, Crabtree, I don't know. I mean, sure, like numerically maybe, but skill-wise, I wouldn't put Crabtree anywhere near Devontae Adams. And Cooper, yeah, Cooper's good. He is a number 1 receiver, but we've seen him play. We know that guy's not a legit number 1 receiver, and I have yet to see anything remotely for me to compare players like Devontae Adams to any of those guys, at least from a regression standpoint. There hasn't been one. So I mean, it's very valid, whatever you guys think. It's very understandable why you rank him at 6 and not as high as 2 like I have.
Yeah, and again, the other thing is we're talking about catches, right? Devontae Adams had 123 catches last year. Hunter Renfrow is a guy that's going to catch 100 footballs. There was not another player on the Packers that was going to catch 100 footballs. Jordy Nelson in his prime caught like 70 balls because he would just catch deep routes to make one cut and score a touchdown, right? So from a volume perspective, Devontae Adams was the volume guy. Hunter Renfrow has been the volume guy. So I think naturally that volume is going to have to be spread out. So I just think it's not a knock on Adams' skill set. I think it's just a knock on the offense that he's getting put into now.
Volume's going down, touchdowns going up. That's my reasoning.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where Devontae Adams falls here, but he falls on our consensus board at number 5. Number 4 on our consensus board is CeeDee Lamb. I have CeeDee Lamb as the number 4 receiver. Sasa Shishot, you have him as the number 7 receiver. And Shobit, you have CeeDee Lamb as the number 3 receiver. Shobit, number 3 receiver and CeeDee Lamb. Talk to us.
Yeah, I'm excited for CeeDee Lamb this year. Okay, there's no Amari Cooper, there's no Cedric Wilson. All right, and he led the target share for receivers last year for the Cowboys. And the issue with the Cowboys last year was one of them was Dak Prescott. He's coming off he was coming off an injury. He has had an off season to kind of repair himself, refresh. And so I think that CeeDee Lamb is due for a breakout year this year. Only once did he fail to score double digits, where we got more than 6 targets last year. So the targets are going to be there. So I expect a more double digits game this year. So I'm really excited for CeeDee Lamb this year.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm very excited for CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's a guy who only caught 79 balls last year. He had 1,100 yards, only 6 touchdowns, right? And that's exactly why, because you had Amari Cooper, you had Michael Gallup, Cedric Wilson was a huge part of their offense, and Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz was also a huge part of their offense. And so now no more Cooper. Michael Gallup's coming off an ACL recovery. No Ced Wilson, right? Dak Prescott's been a guy that, even though I don't personally like Dak Prescott, I think his numbers are better than the player itself. He still puts up like 4,500 yards and 35 touchdowns. So that's got to go somewhere this year. Dalton Schultz had probably the best year of his career thus far. Do I think Dalton Schultz can get a little bit better? I honestly think his range of outcomes is pretty similar to what he did last year, which is really, really good for him. So I think those targets are going to have to go somewhere. CeeDee Lamb's only 23 years old still, so he still hasn't even sniffed his potential. And to me, this is a guy that should be in the same stratosphere and conversation as the Ja'Marr Chases, as the Justin Jefferson. So as long as the Cowboys utilize CeeDee Lamb correctly, and CeeDee Lamb's a guy that plays in the slot, he can play outside, and he can even run end arounds, and he can pretty much do anything a receiver can do. But for a guy like that to only have 6 touchdowns last year is very unheard of. So I think all of those things, and the fact that the Dallas offense is predicated on Dak Prescott utilizing his 4,500 yards per year and 35 touchdowns, those numbers are going to have to go somewhere. And I think that's where CeeDee Lamb takes one of the biggest jumps from last year to this year in terms of receivers. And that's why I have him number 4.
Yeah, makes total sense. I'm just tired of the same sing-song story with CeeDee Lamb. I mean, last year he was supposed to do what you guys are talking about, what's supposed to happen this year. And yeah, Cooper was there. All these other receivers were there, but they weren't really there. Cooper was hurt most of the year. Everybody else was hurt. It was really CeeDee Lamb's time already to shine last year. Didn't happen. Maybe because Dak was still hurt. I don't know. Dak was still slinging out there. There's a lot of reasons that I also believe CeeDee Lamb's going to improve. Last year, I had CeeDee Lamb like at 12 or 15 because I wasn't a believer. For some reason, I'm not a believer. But I think this year I'm forced to be a believer because there's no other options, right? And everything else you said, Sweetcar, I also see him in the same category as Justin Jefferson. But he's just, when you put him side by side, it's the opportunities that Justin Jefferson has that CeeDee Lamb didn't have. So yes, I also think he's going to be great. I do think that. Am I as high as you guys are? No, but there's 6 other players that I'm fully confident in. I'm just not as confident in CeeDee Lamb as I am with those other 6 players.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I think it'll be interesting because CeeDee Lamb has, out of all of the guys that we talk about, he's probably got some of the least amount of catches, the least amount of yards, and the least touchdowns over the course of the last year. But again, to me, this is a guy that hasn't even scratched the surface of his potential. He could have done it last year. You're absolutely right. But a guy named Cedric Wilson had 600 yards and like 7 touchdowns. So he was a very under the radar guy. Dalton Schultz became an under the radar guy as well for them. And so I don't know that the Cowboys, and I don't fully believe in Mike McCarthy. I think Kellen Moore is a great offensive coordinator, but I think Mike McCarthy is like kind of the thing that really is holding this entire team back because he's a horrible, horrible situational coach. So I think the team has not fully utilized or figured out how to utilize a guy like CeeDee Lamb. And I think this entire offseason, my hope is that they have, because to me, the talent is still there. And so it'll be interesting to see if he can take that next leap or if he's still going to, slightly progress, but not quite get to where we think he should get. But nonetheless, he falls on our consensus board at number 4. Now it gets exciting. Number 3 on the board is Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase is the number 3 receiver. I have him number 3. Shishot, you have him number 5. Shobit, you have him number 4. Ja'Marr Chase is a stud. I think he's absolutely still scratching the surface of his talent. A lot of his production came from his touchdowns. He had 13 touchdowns on almost 1,500 yards receiving. He only caught 81 balls, so a lot lower than a lot of these guys in the top 5 that we're traditionally used to seeing in terms of volume. The Bengals are a very, very like run and gun type offense, and I think we've seen that Joe Burrow in this era of NFL football, we don't usually see quarterbacks throw for 500 yards anymore. It happens, but it's not as often as like college and et cetera. But I think Joe Burrow is kind of the trend of a team and an offense in which they are going to try to utilize that more. And I think the problem with the Cincinnati Bengals towards the end of last year was that a lot of defenses started running that too high, cover 2 shell, because they had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and they were tired of Jamar Chase, winning on all these go routes and bombs. And so that means like the under the middle or over the middle stuff is going to be more open. I think that the Bengals are going to have to utilize Jamar Chase a little bit differently and not just run him those go routes. But I think this is another guy, again, that's in the same stratosphere of like elite receivers. And there's really no hole in his game to me. And so because he's in a high flying offense, because there's really no hole in his game, because he's still incredibly young, and because at this young age, he's already produced so exponentially, it's hard to put this guy outside of my top 3. And that's why I have him as number 3. Shisho, you have Jamar Chase as the number 5 receiver, underneath guys like Debo, Adams, JJ. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's no room. There's too many good receivers. I love Chase, but the sample size is very low compared to Adams and Kupp and Samuel and JJ. So for just that's it. That's my only reason. My only knock is I saw what I saw and it was amazing. Can you do it again? And he commanded a 27% target share, which is insane, and it only got more and more throughout the postseason, which means they trust him, right? So that just means that he's going to be, very high on this totem pole of targets as far as, who gets the ball in key situations goes. And that's impressive, because that only means you're going to get more touchdowns, more, broken plays. It's just going to get better. Everything's going to get better there. The only problem is that offense is too good now. And who's going to get the touchdowns? Joe Mixon? Is T. Higgins going to get the touchdown? There's just a lot of mouths to feed. And, I'm not a big mouths to feed guy when it comes to these type of arguments, because I think the studs, just you don't sleep on your studs. Studs are studs. And I'm pretty sure the Bengals understand Jamar Chase is a freaking stud. The only concern is, I would have easily put him in my top 3 or whatnot, but there's just too many names ahead of him that are just way more consistent for a much longer time for me to take one of those guys down and put him over him.
Yeah, for me, Jamar Chase was just an amazing receiver last year. Top 5 in PPR points, receiving touchdowns, and all of that. The stats are all there. But he also did it in a Bengals team where they had all these crazy offensive line woes. And now the offensive line is only getting better. So there's basically the same team as last year, but better offensive linemen. So more opportunities for Jamar Chase to, get the ball, the play continues, and they're not just punting the ball. So I think that's all just good signs for a guy who's capable, has the, all of the athletic abilities to be a top 1 receiver. And now the team is only getting better. So that's just is good for him. The only, he does have a tougher schedule this year. I think that's going to be a concern there. But other than that, I think that he can definitely be top 3 this year easily.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that schedule thing up, Shovit. Based on this CBS stat that I was looking at for strength of schedule, Jamar Chase actually has the hardest receiver strength of schedule. So it'll be interesting to see if that correlates to Jamar Chase actually regressing, if that correlates to them moving Jamar Chase outside of the outside receiver, putting him more in the slot and moving these guys around, because like you said, there's so many good receivers there. And then the last thing you said, Shishod, is like when push comes to shove, when Joe Burrow's under duress and stuff, you have a stud in T. Higgins, you have a reliable target in Tyler Boyd, but that LSU connection, there's something to be said about psychologically. I think Joe Burrow's going to be like, that's my dude. And so who's he going to throw the 50-50 ball up to when push comes to shove? I think it's going to be Jamar Chase. And so we've seen him be able to go up and make those plays. If the offensive line is a little bit better, like you said, shove it with their signings that they have in the offseason, I expect those numbers to get slightly better. So Jamar Chase has a real good shot to have another top 5 receiver performance, maybe even top 3, top 2. Number 2 on the consensus board, our boy, Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson here at number 2. Shisho, you have Justin Jefferson as your 4th receiver. Show that you have Justin Jefferson as your 2nd receiver. And I, on the other hand, no homer at all. I have Justin Jefferson on my board as the number 1 finishing fantasy receiver this year. Shisho, as a Viking fan, you have him the lowest on our list. So talk to us first. Number 4, Justin Jefferson.
I mean, it's very painful at this point to discuss why, who's where this late into the game. It was easy with Evans and AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill. That shit's easy. I could do that all day. But now it's really, I have to dissect this, right? I have to really make sure why these players are where I put them. Justin Jefferson, immense talent. Talent is very there. There's one weakness in his game that I don't know if people even see. I don't even know if people care about. Well, they need to, because I've seen it with my own eyes, and it's something that needs to improve. And if he can improve on that, then next year I put him number one. Until that happens, I need more sample size of that moment that I'm talking about. And that moment is coming down the middle. We're talking slant passes where the ball isn't perfectly here. Sometimes great receivers have to adjust with the ball to make certain plays happen. And I haven't seen that from Justin Jefferson on slant passes. If the ball's a little low, dive for it. If the ball's a little high up, jump for it. If the ball's behind you, turn for it. If you watch the highlights, if you look at all these slant passes Justin Jefferson has accumulated throughout time for over the last 2 years, he doesn't necessarily do those things. And I think as a guy who's watched every single one of those passes, it's okay after the second one. It's okay after the third one. But once there's 4, 5, 6, you're like, wait a second, is this something that needs to be improved? Because me, just like you, I don't see a flaw in his game. He can go deep. He's fast. He can, get in the backfield, which is about to happen this year. More reasons to rank Justin Jefferson higher. But yeah, I have seen some things that still prevent me from putting him in Cooper Kupp category or Devonta Adams category. He's much better than Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel you're playing with 2 players in one position. So that's why I have him so much higher. But yeah, Justin Jefferson, if you can improve, if you can just show me that you can do what Adams can do and you can do what Kupp can do, then it's an easy, I'm going to move him ahead over those guys. But until that moment happens, until I maximize, until I can check off everything on that list like those other 2 guys have, he's going to be the 3rd best receiver, 4th best overall hybrid receiver, 3rd best pure receiver.
Yeah, just curious, if a player has bad highlights, should that be called a low light instead of a highlight?
Got him. Yeah. That's a good one. Wow.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on. So I think Jefferson's number 2. There's a strong case that he could be number 1 this year. So he had 30% target share with Thielen when Thielen was on the field. So there's no he still gets the ball even with Thielen and some of the other guys that you guys have, and he has 3,016 yards the last 2 years, which is insane. And not only that. Yeah, I mean, not only that, the head coach that you guys got was Cooper Kupp's offensive coordinator, right? So Cooper Kupp, who's number 1 last year. Now you guys have that same guy running as the head coach of your team. So all bodes well for Jefferson. Jefferson could definitely easily be top 1, number 1 this year. But just for the sake of Cooper Kupp having a repeat year, I put him as number 2.
Yeah, so for that reason exactly, I put Justin Jefferson as number 1. Justin Jefferson, it's going to be really, really hard to replicate historic seasons, right? Historic seasons are historic seasons for a reason. It's not like, oh, that guy had a historic 7 years. But what's weird about Justin Jefferson is he's had 2 historic seasons now. And combine those historic seasons and they're the best ever. And now Justin Jefferson only needs like 1,200 yards to have the most historic 3 seasons ever. And so, yeah, we had old dinosaur Mike Zimmer who didn't give a shit about individual accolades when Justin Jefferson was wide open, waving the flag, ready to break the records. And they're like, fuck it, we don't really care about that. We'll just win our 9 games and not make the playoffs. But this year we have a guy that actually empowers his players. And he, like you said, Shobit, he's coming from an offense in which Cooper Kupp over the last 2-3 years has put up historic numbers, right? So here's Justin Jefferson, a guy who's incredibly young, a guy who still has not tapped his potential. Most guys don't see their potential until their 3rd or 4th year, and this guy's coming into his 3rd year now. So you're looking at a guy who is now in a scheme of Cooper Kupp, who I think all of us can agree, if we're athletically putting these guys side by side, Justin Jefferson's more athletic than Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp may have a case for having better hands at this stage, but I don't think there's anything really that Cooper Kupp can do that Justin Jefferson can't do. Yes, maybe the middle stuff, Shashot, that you mentioned, if we can hope to see a little bit more of that, but I'm banking on upside potential, right? We're banking on progression. We're banking on guys getting better as, they hit their stride and hit their prime. That's typically what happens. And so for me, the argument for Kupp and Jefferson is that Cooper Kupp had an insane year last year, 145 catches, 1,900 yards, and 16 touchdowns. I mean, catches, yards, and touchdowns are absolutely bonkers. So for him to replicate that, I think will be incredibly tough. Can Cooper Kupp still have a historic year having 1,500 yards, catching 125 balls, and having 12 touchdowns? Absolutely. Still a fantastic year. But now you're giving Justin Jefferson the wheels to drive the vehicle that Cooper Kupp has been driving the last 2 years. And again, I think the sky's the limit. Adam Thielen gets another year older. Adam Thielen has started to get hurt a little bit more the last couple of years. Adam Thielen steals more touchdowns from Justin Jefferson than anybody steals anything from anybody, right? Thielen is a red zone machine. And so I think there was a stat that came up that Justin Jefferson, of the top 5 or 7 fantasy finishes, had the least amount of targets in the red zone. And so I think we got to figure out, hey, this is the best fucking player on our team. Let's get him the ball in the red zone. So Kevin O'Connell, coming in with the offensive mastermind that he is, I think is going to utilize that. And also lining him up in the backfield. All of these things, all of these gadget type situations that Justin Jefferson is going to get to maximize his potential outside of already being an incredible receiver. I think the sky is absolutely the limit for this guy. Pair that with the fact that Kirk Cousins is one of the most accurate passers the NFL has ever seen. And so we're not going to have to worry about the balls not being placed correctly for this guy. So I think Justin Jefferson just has a chance progression wise to now eclipse even what he's already done and be the number 1 receiver in fantasy. I think the only hindrance on that, in my personal opinion, is not necessarily Adam Thielen. It's not anybody. It's actually KJ Osborne, a number 3 receiver, who I think is going to emerge. And if that's the case, then maybe that's the only reason he doesn't. But all of the other variables aside, I think Justin Jefferson is tremendously talented, and I think he's still so young and so much left to learn and so much untapped potential to reach that I think, again, if there's a year that a receiver can hit the number 1 receiver peak, it's Justin Jefferson, and it's this coming year. And that's why Justin Jefferson is number 2. Number 1, I think it's pretty obvious on the consensus board. It is Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp as number 1 for both of you guys, and I had him as number 2. Again, I gave my reasons. My reason is just the fact that, again, historic seasons are tough to replicate. And the other thing that, I'm looking around at a lot of other places that are not reading as much into this Allen Robinson edition as maybe I am. I think a lot of people are just kind of sweeping Allen Robinson under the rug. They're like, oh, okay, well, they had OBJ last year. They had Robert Woods last year. OBJ at this stage in his career, yeah, he can still give you flashes of greatness. Robert Woods, a great possession receiver. I still think Allen Robinson in his entire career has never played with a good quarterback. He's never played in an offense that's actually been able to maximize what Allen Robinson can do. And so I think finally this year, Allen Robinson is in an offense that's going to be able to maximize what Allen Robinson can do. He's got a quarterback, Matthew Stafford, that is not going to be afraid to get him the football. He's a big-bodied receiver that, can get the jump balls. And so it takes a lot of pressure away from Cooper Kupp. So I think Allen Robinson having a good year is going to take slightly away from Cooper Kupp. Again, Cooper Kupp can still put up insane numbers, just not to the level that he did last year. And that's why I had Cooper Kupp number 2. But it's really, really hard, I agree, to not put Cooper Kupp as a number 1 receiver with how amazing he's been and how consistent he's been. So that's why I had him as number 2 and not number 1.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's Cooper Kupp. Like, it's pretty wild, this guy's progression, because just 2 years ago, he had 6 touchdowns or something like that, something very minute. And all of a sudden you get 16, right? I don't expect the 16 to happen, but we saw what he's capable of. Here, let me tell you some reasons why I'm fearful that he could not reach 1 again. And then let me tell you a lot of reasons why he will be number 1 again. So of the 5 receivers that have caught at least 16 touchdowns in the history of whatever, they averaged just 6.6 touchdowns the following season. There is a trend here. People start, again, I'm the film guy. I fucking focus on the film a lot because there's a reason all these things happen. There's a reason he caught 16 touchdowns. He was doing something some other people weren't. So the coaches, they sit down in the film room and they're like, okay, why did these 16 things happen? And how do we turn this into 6 this upcoming year? And looks like it works. From a coaching standpoint, it works because the average is just 6.6 after scoring over 16, not even just 16, where you're including Randy Moss's 27 touchdowns, whatever, into this. They average 6.6, which is a big number, which means the NFL is so dynamic. They're adjusting to these things happen. However, now let me tell you why it could happen again. And he might be the first person or the third person that ever did that. So the reason is there is no OBJ. He's probably not going to sign with anybody until November, late October at the earliest. And then, just looking at this offense, and they know what they did the previous year to win the Super Bowl, they're going to try to do the same. Not like nobody tries to fix shit that's not broken, right? They're going to go with this approach again. It's just a matter of, can he last? Are other teams going to figure out their schemes? That's what it's come to. That's what always happens when it comes to Super Bowl winning teams, is that they try to keep doing what they did the previous year, and other teams have to try to not let them do that. So this whole Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp thing, yeah, I think they're pretty much identical in their abilities. I think what they can do. Justin Jefferson has not played with this many weapons in one team before. It's not just KJ Osborne. Now Dalvin Cook is receiving at least, like, he's going to get 50 targets coming out of the backfield. And don't forget, a guy named Irv Smith is now back. I think he's going to play a pretty significant role in the passing game, because the Rams do like to use their tight ends in the upper half of the league. So all that being said, I think there's 3 keys to Cooper Kupp replicating as the number 1 receiver again. One is continue what you're doing, right? You have even less weapons to worry about, which should mean more volume. Number 2, we need Matthew Stafford to be Matthew Stafford, because Matthew Stafford has no history of being Matthew Stafford 2 years in a row. He's very, very volatile, and he has no control as the primary main player on the field to dictate what happens in the field. He's not like that at all. He has to have things working around him, and then he can adjust as the game goes on, but things need to fall in place perfectly. So those 2 things so far. And then number 3, this running approach. Now, for the first time in many, many years, the Rams are going to have a solid running back starting the year off fully healthy. That hasn't happened in a very long time. And since in the times that has happened in the past, those running backs took control of the situation significantly. And, with this whole offense not running the ball so much nowadays, maybe they're just going to pass a lot. But if they were smart, they would realize that they do have Cam Akers. Cam Akers, we don't talk about him very much. We don't put him in our list, but I will not be surprised if he's the number 4, number 5 running back in fantasy out of nowhere. These are things that could happen. So unless those things happen, I think replicating what exactly happened last year is very, very possible. And this is the most possible thing to replicate out of anybody we've talked about probably so far on this list.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Kupp is number 1 for me because all those reasons that you mentioned. No OBJ, no Woods. I'm not a believer of Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson had his opportunity with the Bears and
With
Darnell.
Trubisky, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Darnell
He's a great
Mooney
quarterback.
kind of stole
I
the
don't
show
know,
there.
man. I feel like you should give Allen Robinson some more love, because he hasn't done anything to point the finger at him. The fingers have always been pointed around him. Jaguars, Bears, Trubisky,
Bortles,
it's just
Trubisky, and Fields, man.
Fields.
Like, imagine having those guys throw you the football when you know you're a good receiver, and people being like, he's not that good, because the fucking ball doesn't even get to you half the time, man. Like, that's ridiculous.
It almost like, if you know a player is good, I think a week in and week out, and you're not giving him the ball, I think that's not right. But they probably know something that, they're targeting guys like Mooney over Allen Robinson.
They have shitty quarterbacks. Shitty quarterbacks.
Justin Fields had his opportunity to give the ball.
He's a shitty quarterback. He's a good runner. He's a shitty quarterback.
Awful. The decision-making has been awful, is basically from the quarterback perspective.
I really hope Allen Robinson has a resurgence, but his role.
Oh, he will.
His role is going to be like Robert Woods was last year when he played. Because even when Robert Woods was there, you didn't see Cooper Kupp not having good, he still got the touchdowns. He still got the targets, the 100+ yards. And so I don't think anything has changed from that offense to not believe that Cooper Kupp will be the primary target, someone that gets all the targets there from the receiving side. And I don't believe in Cam Akers either. The guy didn't even show up in the playoff time. When it counted, he's going through some Achilles tear, I think. So that's a pretty significant injury. Maybe Henderson has a bigger role than Cam Akers, but I still think that Cooper Kupp will be more secure than ever. And his historic season that happened last year can continue on to this year and to solidify his number 1 role.
Damn, I dislike so many things you said except for the last sentence.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking that Cooper Kupp is going to have another great year. I don't think any of us are disagreeing with that, because yes, Cooper Kupp is more than likely going to be like as surefire of draft pick as you can make. I just think Cooper Kupp can have a great year, and Allen Robinson can still actually be really good as a receiver because he finally has a quarterback
He's
and an
better than
offense that actually
OBJ. In my eyes, he's better than OBJ.
At this stage, with OBJ coming back from injury, all this crap, I would take Allen Robinson 10 out of 10 times. And why I don't agree with the Robert Woods comparison is Woods is such an over-the-middle possession receiver. Allen Robinson's a big fucking target. Allen Robinson's a guy that you can catch jump balls with in the end zone, right? So Cooper Kupp is not a guy that typically Matthew Stafford's throwing jump ball 50-50 balls to. Cooper Kupp's running a fake in, out. Oh, he's wide open. Cooper Kupp's running a fake in, slant. He's wide open. He's catching all his passes mostly that way, right? So those over-the-top passes, who are those most likely going to go to this year? If I'm banking on somebody, it's Allen Robinson. So if Allen Robinson stays healthy, again, he's been in the Vikings division for some years now. And so getting to see this guy not utilized to his maximum potential has been really, really sad. And so I'm really, really hopeful that the Rams can resurge him because I do think that the talent is there. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on Allen Robinson. But I don't think that means that Cooper Kupp is not going to be a top 3 receiver. He's probably going to be top 1.
I think it only helps. I think it only helps. That's what I was trying to say is I think not having OBJ, not having Woods may seem fearful, but having Allen Robinson is better than having either of those guys. I know Shovit, like you've focused a lot more on football over the last couple of years, and that those weren't the Allen Robinson years. But before that, Allen Robinson was in every conversation as a top 10 receiver in the league. Like we're talking number 9, number 10, number 8, right there with the Keenan Allens. So he's very skilled. With horrible quarterback. That's the reason. That's the main reason is what if it's just like Kupp with 6 touchdowns and now you put Matthew Stafford, you get 16, right? So it's the same thing. This is going to be another Kupp situation. They're going to flourish very well, but I think Kupp is still going to be the guy in that area.
I mean, that's a good point though, right? So like when you have guys like Allen Robinson, what is his ADP? When do you draft him? You haven't seen anything in the last 2 years to say that, okay, he's a 5th round pick or 6th round pick. This is a guy that's going to be like, I don't know, what, 12th, 13th, maybe,
Yeah. So, then if you're thinking like that, then I'm going to scoop him up so quickly and he's going to be getting points.
And I'm okay with that. Like, I just don't know. I'm not confident I haven't seen anything in the last 2 years to wanting to draft Allen Robinson. So I would shy away from him and that's like just a risk mitigation for me.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like a Terry McLaurin. The talent is there and the quarterback has never been. So we shying away from Terry McLaurin. If Terry McLaurin was put on the Rams this year and he was going to be their number 2 receiver next year, would be like, he's been number 1 receiver. He's been asked with Taylor Heineke. What the fuck are we going to do with him? No, dude, he's a fucking stud. He just never had a good receiver. And to me, Allen Robinson is the epitome of a stud who's never had a good quarterback. So
he's a prototypical person in that conversation.
We'll see. It'll be an interesting year to see where this shakes up. I think Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson finishing 1-2. The points may be very, very minute in the differences in them. So I don't think you're going to go wrong either way. But that's how it shakes out. We have Cooper Kupp as the consensus number 1 receiver. It'll be interesting to see if he can replicate again. That year he had last year was just beyond historic. 145 catches. The catches can still be there. I don't think, again, you're losing 2 receivers, you're adding 1 receiver. So I think the catches from a volume perspective may still be there. Will the 1,947 yards, almost 2,000 receiving yards be there again? I don't know. That's really, really tough. And 16 touchdowns. I mean, again, that's a really, really high number to replicate. And like you said, Shisho, Matthew Stafford and even Tage, who's a Stafford, fucking worshipper that was on our podcast last episode, talked about Matthew Stafford's range of outcomes are incredibly erratic. So let's say next year they're coming off a Super Bowl win. Matthew Stafford has a very, very subpar year. That's going to directly correlate to Cooper Kupp's numbers regressing, right? I think it's safe to say that if Matthew Stafford has the first 7 weeks where he's throwing 15 interceptions because Matthew Stafford historically has done things like that, that's going to correlate to Cooper Kupp's numbers regressing. We have not seen Kirk Cousins in his range of outcomes recently be a guy that's going to throw 15 to 20 interceptions, right? So I think for that reason, that's another argument to me that, in my opinion, if we're talking about last 2 seasons in consistency, Matthew Stafford is a guy that doesn't put together 2 consistent football seasons. So is that going to put a hindrance on Cooper Kupp's numbers? We'll see. That's it. That's the episode. Those are the top 10 fantasy football receivers for the 2022 season. It's going to be an interesting one. I hope Shovit passes on Cam Akers. I hope Shovit passes on Allen Robinson. I forget what drafts. I forget. Are you number 10?
I'm the last 10. Yep.
You're 10. So I'm 1 and you're 10. Shisho, where are you?
7 or something like that. 6, maybe 6 or 7.
Okay. So you're at the end, I'm at the first, and you're kind of right in the middle. So it'll be really interesting to see how this draft shakes out. But let us know. Again, if you've been following along with us, thank you so much for all the support. If you're watching on YouTube. Leave a comment, let us know, tweet at us if we're crazy, if our rankings are stupid, if Allen Robinson should be in the top 5, or if we should be stopped wasting our breath and talking about a guy like Allen Robinson. Let us know. But that's it for the episode of The Only Playbook here. Again, I'm Sweetcar Shovit, the usual suspects. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll see you next week. See ya.